All right, let's do this. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Josh Martin podcast. Mike, welcome to the podcast. If you haven't already hit that follow button, please rate the show and give us to get us in front of more people. Our mission with the podcast is to inspire, create, motivate those who need it, that extra push, as well as bring tremendous value to those variety of different topics from daily life to major business decisions. So with that said, thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast today. I have a very special guest here today, guys, that I'll give an intro to. And for those that haven't seen it already, this is going to be a special Friday, no fail Friday episode that we're only doing once a month. So I'm very happy to have my good buddy Will here. So I'll give him his intro. My next speaker, Will, is known for being able to connect everyone everywhere. Wi-Fi, as he is known on Instagram, and or Will Figueroa, is known for connecting people to distant access points of information and technology so that others can experience life and business in full fidelity. Once told by doctors that he would not be capable of doing anything other than taking tickets at a theater, he became the first entrepreneur in his family when he was recently let go from a Fortune 500 company due to the pandemic. He has since built his own company, purplecircle.io, to over six figures in 6 months. Will, welcome to the show, buddy.
I appreciate that intro and I appreciate the opportunity, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. This is cool.
Yeah, this is gonna be awesome. I love these ones. They're gonna be super special because they're only once a month. So it's gonna be awesome. So we will dive right into it. Will, why don't you give us a quick little blurb, 5 to 10 minutes, whatever you want, on your story, how you've come to where you are now, and let everybody in a little bit on who Will is.
Yeah, so like Josh mentioned, my name is Will Figueroa. Friends call me Wi-Fi for short. You can find me on Instagram at Wi-Fi too as well. I think I've been on Instagram since like the second day.
Love it.
I heard about Instagram through a South by Southwest live audio stream when it was, this was before Clubhouse was Clubhouse, before Twitter was Twitter kind of thing. And I thought, oh, this is cool. Let me grab my name. And so, yeah, I've been on since probably like the first or second week.
That's cool to know. I was going to ask you how you got that, because that's a very distinct name. That's
people
awesome.
Ask all the time, and I have to give credit when credit is due. I'm a big fan. Back in the day, there was a cable television network called Tech TV that then evolved into G4 TV. But when all the producers got fired, when that network got bought out, and they basically wiped the entire production team, a lot of them went solo. And one of them was Leo Laporte, and Leo Laporte had, he had a bunch of different shows, but he ended up going solo and has a network called twit.tv. So This Week in Tech. And it was on that show that I heard about, the latest in technology from South by Southwest, that he had all these other experts. And so he was speaking about Instagram, and that's basically how I got connected to it. I was like, oh, cool. I'm into photography. At the time, I had a cool Nikon DSLR camera, and I thought I was going to go into that. And in any event, I digress. That's basically how I got into Instagram and how I got Wi-Fi. That's the long of it, actually.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I love it. That's awesome. I was going to ask you at one point, so that's cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is that growing up, I always had an affinity towards consumer technology. I loved gizmos and gadgets. I loved playing with the latest. I'm reminded of Sega's Game Gear and different consoles, and I was the neighborhood nerd, man. I got paid to connect the VCR and fix the clock on the VCR and help people record their TV shows and soap operas, and I got paid in lasagna for years.
Yeah. Lasagna, I love it.
Yeah, it's true. It's very, very true. I would get paid in pasta growing up. And my godfather, who is a retired NYPD cop, at his retirement, he really fell into entrepreneurship. And if I had to guess, it's probably where I get the biggest itch from, is from that side of the family, my mom's side of the family. and he came to me and asking for help in regards to a bunch of stuff that he was doing, renovating his home. And he said, well, how much do I owe you? And I said, you're my godfather. Just, have my aunt make some penne vodka or, some lasagna, whatever, and, call it quits. He goes, no, you don't understand. What you do has value. You are solving problems. And at this point, I'm, 22, 21, 22. And he says, look, I'm going to talk to your mom and I'm going to file for a company for you. You let me know what you want to call it and we'll sit down and I'll give you the next steps. And so that was a big fight. I remember that being a big fight in my house, because that was when I was really going against traditional norms. Like, I'm a Puerto Rican Catholic, firstborn son. Like, how dare you think of entrepreneurship? You're going to go to school and you're going to go graduate and you're going to get the job, right? And here's my godfather, putting these things in my head about entrepreneurship. And go, oh, wait a minute, there's another way around this. There's other ways of making money. Oh, wait a minute. And then I really started digging into it. Fast forward to today. You mentioned it in my intro. 2 years ago now, I got let go from a Fortune 50 company. I was there for a few years. I was saving the millions year over year. Every year I was there, and the pandemic hit. I was in the travel industry within that company. When the pandemic hit, no one was traveling. No one. And I was on the luxury end of that travel industry. So no one in their paparazzi groups or their entourages, they weren't, plopping down the black card and, going to Dubai and France. And if those people weren't traveling, then my group wasn't getting paid. And the organization at the time was nice enough to assess for about a year, really giving us a year to figure out what the next move is. And in that year, I saw the telltale signs. I'm no guru, but you could read a P&L, right? A profit and loss statement. And you could see, we're spending way more money than we are gaining money. And when I saw this, because it was a publicly traded company, I knew I needed to invest in myself. And that's when we really got connected. I entered into a business accelerator group with you, Josh. And that's the beginning of our relationship. And that's the beginning really of my business. I filed for my business here in Central Florida. 2017, but I was half pregnant, right? I had the 9 to 5. I'm a family man, right? At the time I have a young baby. It's like, when am I really gonna put my all into this? And when the pandemic hit, I started seeing all these red flags, and I thought, man, I really need to invest in myself, because this company isn't doing it anymore. They've cut everything. And so after years of just toiling and tormenting against investing in myself, which now I think back, that's crazy. But the biggest thing for me was because I didn't want to spend money on education again. I had such a bad taste in my mouth with traditional education, going to college, getting the degree, the whole university system here in the States. I got so sick of it that I was a proud dropout. I told myself, I'm never going to invest in my education again, right? And that just goes to show that, it's ignorant thinking, it's small-mindedness. So it was my conditioning growing up. And when this opportunity came my way, I didn't even think I was going to be able to afford it. And sure enough, I end up putting the money into this business accelerator program. And before you know it, I'm taking sales workshops, I'm doing marketing workshops, I'm doing scaling workshops, I'm automation, everything that a business needs. And not just the foundation, but really above and beyond, really understanding and going under really understanding the psychology of sales and why it's important to operate in and with integrity with others, with your service or your business. I have been in learning and development now 10 plus years now. And when I was let go, I was no longer under the regulation. I had no, there are no more barriers anymore. I got let go the last Friday of February, 2021. Monday, I closed my first deal. And between Friday and Monday, I was screaming at God. I was cussing him out. I was mad. I was.
So let's touch on that for a sec, Will. So what were some of the things like, so when they came to you and said, look, we're gonna have to let you go. We don't have the money, whatever, however that went down.
Right.
What was going through your mind after that conversation, kind of until, obviously till you got till Monday?
Sure. The immediate reaction was, I knew it.
yeah.
I knew it. No, I may have thought it. I did not say it. But the truth is, what I did say, and I'll never forget the conversation. The director was the person who called me within our organization, and I felt so bad because I knew, with tears in her eyes, I knew the news that she had to deliver, not only to me, but I'm sure to the other colleagues that were being let go. From what I understood, it was in the thousands. And she was the one making these phone calls with all the other higher ups. And I'll never forget that moment after her finishing the statement where, we're going to move on. We no longer need your services, that kind of verbiage. I looked at her and I said, of all the people that you're going to speak to today, I promise you, I'm the last one you need to worry about. Promise. Here's what's going on. I have a plan, and I'm more than happy to do the right thing. I wasn't going to burn a bridge. Let me know what my next steps are in order to make it easier for you and in this transition. I want to explore all the options, but I'm really leaning towards this. And here's the work that I've done prior to show it. And she had this, when I tell you, Josh, she had like this wave of relief, like, oh yeah, I forgot who I was speaking to. Because I always had the hustle mindset. Like I always had like the entrepreneurial mindset. I always wanted to ensure that the bottom line was positive. The few years that I was with the organization was the first time in decades that organization even made $1. And that was because of myself and my team and the work that we had done in that organization. Decades. We were like the Costco chickens of that organization, right?
Yeah.
Like
you guys were the entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, for sure. When that happened, I like any man, I think you're mad, you're upset, you're frustrated. But in the back of my head, I knew that I couldn't live that forever. I gave myself 24, 48 hours. I gave myself the weekend, and I'll never forget washing my car that Monday morning, because I knew that I was going to start cold calling, and I was going to hit doors, and I was going to talk to businesses, like I knew. So I was washing the car, and as I'm washing the car, I get a phone call from the guy who gave me my start. His name is David Bain. He's like the #1 in roofing in South Florida, if not the state already, because he's massive now. And I'll never forget that phone call where he said, hey, I heard what you've done for this other organization. I have some opportunities within mine. I'd love to speak to you about it. And he's the person who gave me my first shot. I will always sing the praises of David Baines over at David Baines Roofing, because he knew the difficulties, he knew the transition, he knew what it took to take that entrepreneurial step. And he was so kind about it. He was the person who really took me underneath his wing and gave me an opportunity to intentionally fail on certain things so that I could learn from it while still being protected from the outside world. I could never thank that man enough for what he did. Since then, I built my company purplecircle.io, certified with HubSpot as a solutions provider. We now are known as Kajabi Heroes, where we help people build out and monetize what they know so that they can have an impact. And I just took everything that I learned in learning and development for the last, 10, 15 years, something like that. And I started just giving it back to people who I knew could make an impact, because that was my itch. That's what I really wanted. I really wanted to help others make an impact, facilitating the technology, because I was always that nerd, right? Yeah. But I was also a man of faith. And so I knew that if I can just amplify not only my message and the messages of other good people and good, other entrepreneurs, then those people would be satisfied, and those people would have an amazing experience, not only in their business, but possibly in their faith. And it was in that possibility that I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. And that was really the birth of Purple Circle. That first year, that first, not including like the ramp or the runway that I gave myself, because I got a severance package and things like that. The business itself that first year did like $16,000. It was barely anything. The second full year, now that we're way into six figures, and we're on track to do 2.8 million. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. No, I love it, man. That's awesome. The hustle is real. It's I always like your story because it's cool, right? Like, because most people get that, they get let go and it's just like defeat, right? And they're like, what do we do? Where are we going? So I think it's really cool that you already had that mindset and you were already kind of moving in that direction anyway. And it's not a story you hear all the time, right? A lot of people just get weighed down by that. And you were like, look, it is what it is. I seen the writing on the wall. It's time to do my thing. This is my unseen blessing from above, that it's time to do my own shit, right?
Yeah, totally. And credit to my mom, because my mom was the one who, growing up, and as traditional as she was, it was my mom who taught me to question everything in faith, everything in life, everything. What are the opportunities? Are they the only opportunities? Are they the only outcomes? Are they the only, what really is out there? What else, what other paths can you take for an even better understanding, or, being more efficient? Or the biggest one for her was the bigger impact in faith. And kudos to my mom, because that's, in the middle of this, that's who I started thinking about. And I started questioning, well, what are my next steps? Is it just getting another job? Is it a job in a new industry? Is it a job? Do I even take it? Do we swap and become a modern family where I'm the one who's a stay-at-home dad? And I was open to that too, right? Because there's real pride in that too. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And all those options were on the table. But I knew that if I didn't give this a shot, there was an itch inside. There was I don't know, like a je ne sais quoi, right? Like there's something that was like, no, move. And that's kind of how I've always been. It's always been, well, what else can I do? How can I make this better? How can I make this better? And not only for me, but for others around me. And that's kind of been my MO. I just happen to leverage technology and faith a lot.
Yeah. So I kind of love that you brought that up, because it's something that I'm studying right now, is like a lot of this limiting belief. And it's like, look yourself in the mirror. Is this your belief, or was this given to you by your parents, your grandparents, that, your family around you, your brothers and sisters? And so listening to your story, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a lot of the, like you said, questioning everything came from your mom, and that has helped you tremendously over to where you are now.
Oh, hands down. whether I want to admit it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
And to that point, Josh, there are some things that we could be blessed with, and then there are some things that some of us can consider a curse or a weight or whatever the case may be, right? And we've spoken about this in other areas too, about even like at-home trauma and stuff that you may have experienced. And for me, the biggest takeaway that really was a double-edged sword was the questioning in and of itself, right? Because sometimes that could be, a burden, right? And then you start thinking, well, why am I questioning? Is it because of my mom? Or is it because these are my genuine questions? Are these my questions? I think when I realized that it was really my voice asking the questions, that's when I knew that it wasn't just a training or a learning or a conditioning, but that I took it and I made it my own. And I knew, oh, okay, yeah, this is the right thing to do. So yeah, sometimes what we consider to be, a pain in the butt, it could be an in-law, it could be a
mother-in-law.
Yeah, it could be your in-laws, it could be, a neighbor, it could be, a punk kid across the street, whatever. I find that if you start questioning it, big questions too. What can I learn from this? How can I help that person? What don't I know? That's a big one for me, right? So those are questions that as I started to learn about questioning from my mom, that those were my questions that I learned, that I picked up to ask, versus maybe some of the limiting questions that I grew up with from my mom, right? Because those were her questions. Yeah. And I learned over time that I needed to make my own questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love it. Let's roll into the first question on here. How has failure shaped you over your life?
Oh, all of it.
So what are some of the defeats that you've had like over your life? It doesn't have to necessarily be business, it could be personal too, but like, I think a lot of people struggle with how do they overcome stuff. And I mean, you and I have talked about this hundreds of times, is like, you don't see the blessing until you're through the hustle and the trees, right? Then you look back, you're like, well, that was easy. But
where's the button, right? Where's the
where's the easy button? Yeah. But like, just walk us through a few of those things that you've overcome, or personally, fitness wise, business, any of that.
Excuse me. There's a bunch of stuff, man. I mean, from a really young age, I think it was like 7th or 8th grade, and you mentioned this in the intro too as well. I was told by a social worker, I was told by a child psychologist, a clinical psychologist, that I was not cognitively capable enough to do anything more than take tickets at a theater, and that my mother had to accept that, and that I had to accept this fact, that I just couldn't, I wasn't capable enough, right? So talk about a barrier, right? And I want to talk about conditioning. That really kind of shaped me. And there were plenty of moments, Josh, that I just used it as a crutch. That for me is a massive failure. But that's me failing myself, right? So I mean, I can go on and on that one, but the truth of the matter is that if it's not for failure, none of us would be who we are today, whether it's our own failure or someone else's. The difference is how we see it. The difference is what we do in that failure, right? And that's what I've learned. And as much as I want to grandstand and I'd love to be able to tell you that like I'm the guru in this, like these are all recent, learnings for myself. That's the God honest truth. That these are all recent learnings. Had it not been for the failures of, gosh, my parents, my neighbors, my school, my, all the things, I would not be who I am and where I am today. I am very, very grateful for those failures in my life. But we speak about this too, but I am gratefully unsatisfied. I am grateful, but I am unsatisfied. I know that I can do more. I much like a mutual mentor of ours, right? Grant Cardone, I want to measure against my potential. Forget about anyone else. And I know my potential is massive. And that's the race I try to focus on the most.
Yeah, for sure. I think so for me, for anybody that doesn't know, like I have ADD. My brother has ADHD. And a very similar thing, right? Like we're told the doctors, these people that you think have studied all this, they know everything.
Same. I was recently diagnosed, by the way, as an adult.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
As an adult, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. Insane. I get it 100%.
Yeah. But it's the same thing, right? Like they're like, oh, you're not going to succeed in this. You're going to do in this. And they're like planting that seed. And so one of the books I'm reading right now is The 4 Agreements. Have you read that book?
Yeah, great book.
Such a great book.
I know of it, and I skim the lines, right? But yeah. I know of it.
Yeah, it's such a great book, right? And it's just like things that are implanted to you by somebody that you trust and love. That's something that they say to you. The moment you agree to it in your mind, it's implanted into your mind, and you almost have that belief instantly on yourself, right?
Programming, man.
And yeah. And so one of the things in the book they talk about is this girl is singing. Her mom's had a bad day, and her mom snaps at her and says, no, you're horrible at singing. And so for the rest of her life, that girl doesn't sing. Right. So really, I think one of the things I'm trying to say to everybody here is like, really evaluate what has been said to you in the past. Is that actually a truth? Right. Is that one person, like we're talking about music, that one person could love this type of music and hate this one, but there's a whole genre of different people over here that would love to hear you sing or whatever, right? So you just have to find whatever your song is and just give her, right? And do your thing. But just really I've been doing it a lot myself lately, is like self-reflection. And it's like, what beliefs are actually Josh's, right? Like,
Mhm.
they're not mom and dads or brothers and sisters. Like, what are Josh's beliefs?
Right.
And I think a lot of us need to spend that more time with ourselves to figure that out, right?
It's so important, and I find that in the beginnings, and like anything else, right? In the beginnings, it's difficult. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. There's apps, there's prayer, there's retreats that you could spend money on, there's professionals that you could spend money on, there's just sitting in silence too. And like anything, it's going to be difficult, right? But I found that, and what I need to work on the most, me specifically, full transparency, is the consistency in that. Because when you become consistent in that reflection, then it allows for you to not only see how far you've come, but to then be able to make micro movements or micro pivots towards the destinations in life.
I think it's you got to take ownership of what's going on in your life, right? Like, I was
Right.
doing that recently. I'm like, I'm not happy with the way I look. I want like to be in better shape. And then
Right.
I'm like, yeah, well, those brownies you had on Friday probably didn't help. You haven't been in the gym in 3 weeks. So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got to make that decision myself, right? You can't blame the environment around you. You make those decisions. And I think if you hold yourself to a higher standard and more accountable, that you'll accomplish more, right?
Yeah.
So,
100%.
you've kind of already answered this question. What was a previous obstacle that you thought was a hindrance, but ended up being a strength of yours?
Yeah. I mean, there were so many, and that goes back to failures, right? Because if I take on those failures, then that's an obstacle, right? And each one of them, right? So that emphasizes the point about mindset. That emphasizes the point about, if I had to choose, one, or one of the biggest obstacles, me specifically, it's mindset, man. It's the self-talk. Self-talk is so key. And when I found that I can purge some of that negative self-talk, I didn't even know that was even possible. I am a massive fan of going to therapy. I have found an amazing treatment called EMDR, eye desensitization. Let's see, eye movement desensitization and recovery, I think, is the way that I think that's what it is, the acronym stands for. But EMDR is a treatment for me, that it's a style of treatment in therapy that works so well for me. It allows for me to focus in on that self-talk. Where does it come from? Why do I feel what I feel? So that I can finally get over that obstacle. So if no one else listens or remembers anything else from this session, like, that's my biggest takeaway. Go see someone, find someone who is a specialist and certified in EMDR treatment. It's night and day. An example would be, is it Prince Harry who walked away from the right?
Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, Harry and Meghan Markle, right? So Harry has gone through EMDR treatment, and he credits the EMDR treatment to his story, to his success, his ability to be able to remove himself from that. We don't know what goes on beyond closed doors, right? Regardless if it's royalty or your neighbor. We don't know what happens on the inside, and not only the inside of the home or the house, but on the inside of the person. And Harry says all the time that he is just so much happier. Is it a little bit more complicated? Yeah, sure. It's new. The journey that he's on is new. Something that I teach my daughter daily, that we go over, is that it is better to blaze a trail alone than to walk with others in mediocrity. And she's 5.
Wow.
And she says this every day. It's one of the many mantras, or one of the many prayers that we go through every day. And Harry is an example of that. I'm an example of that. The obstacles in my life were traditional Catholic Puerto Rican firstborn, right? Like, that enough.
Yeah.
that enough could be something that holds anyone down and pigeonholes them into a certain lifestyle, a certain journey. Had I not had the opportunity and good friends like you, Josh, and others to support and say, hey man, maybe you need to speak to someone. Hey man, there's these new therapies out there. Hey man, that seems like a disbelief. That seems like something that is not true. Had it not been for people like you and amazing services like that, I would not be able to have overcome those obstacles that oftentimes are just from society. Forget about mom and dad, right? Like it's just society, it's the culture that we live in, right? So yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest obstacle was headspace, was that self-talk.
I think there's like a stigma on therapy, right? They're like, oh, there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Right. And like anybody that doesn't know, like Will knows this, I'm a huge mental health advocate, particularly for men. Men will put a game face on and just get shit done through the day, right? More often than women will. Women will talk to each other. They're more open with each other. Guys aren't like that, right? It takes a lot for us to open up and kind of start talking to each other about what's going on in our life. And I think for me, and I haven't actually done therapy. Like I've talked in groups and whatever, but I haven't actually gone like to a professional. But correct me if I'm wrong, Will.
Groups are great. I'm all about that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they are for sure. You get so many different opinions and different help from other people, right? Yeah. But if you go to a therapist, it's like there's a barrier there of confidentiality that I think gives you a little bit of confidence on what you're saying.
Oh, sure.
That, right. And I think the way that society has come now with social media, with all of this stuff of, just pushing the media in different ways they want you to go, the governments are changing, everything's, we're in such a adapting and moving society now that everything is so different all the time, that it's having a huge impact on mental health. Even people don't even realize it, right? And so I think, breaking that barrier and talking about like what we're talking about today is huge, because people need to realize, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing broken with you. You just need to ask for help and get it out of there. And sometimes the ones that you love next to you can't provide that, right?
100%. It's unfortunate, but the day of this recording, I found out that I think a lot of our childhood heroes, Jason Frank, who the guy who played in Power Rangers, recently died. We got reports that if it wasn't yesterday or today at the time of the recording, we're doing this November 20th, that he passed away. And,
wow, I didn't know that.
And there's rumors of self-harm, and I hope I'm wrong. I pray to God that I'm wrong, but if I'm not, my genuine heart and prayer go out to him, his family, his children, and fans, because more than anything, I like that can be avoided. And much like you're talking about, Josh, it takes a lot to talk about it. I think it takes even more courage and more bravery to be the one to ask, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Hey, your nose is down for a long time. I see you grinding. I just, let's go to a game. Let's go out and do something different. Because if you're the one who's seeing it, I think you're the one who could help too. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily that person's full responsibility for the life of that other person, but you can change the world, and that world could be that person's world.
Yeah.
And that's enough. You want to change the world, you want to have an impact. Just being there for someone could be enough. That could be enough to say, man, this changed my world. Thank you so much. Yeah. So to anyone who's listening, if you need help, reach out, call, text. And if you think that you're okay, and maybe you see someone, reach out. Hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? Are you okay? Is your soul? What I ask is, hey, how's your soul? Is your soul okay?
Powerful. Yeah.
Is your soul okay? And I'm not saying that I have a lot of experience with this, but 9 times out of 10, the few people that I do have those deep conversations with, if I notice it, I take them to the side and I go, hey, is your soul okay? I know you're okay. I know physically you're okay. How's your soul? Is that okay? That opens up just a door to just finally the floodgate to just open up. Yeah. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's just therapeutic, right? Just to say it out loud, just to get it off, but get it off your chest. But it goes both ways. It's not just for the person who may be listening to this and hurting, but it's also the person who's listening to this and maybe is in a good state and recognizes someone else who maybe is not. So I would encourage both sides of that camp. Not only say something if you're hurting, but if you see something, say something, ask, hey, is your soul okay? It makes a big difference.
Yeah. No, for sure it does, right? Like people just want to know that somebody cares, right?
Yeah.
When you're in that mindset, I mean, you've been in it, I've been in it, I've pulled myself out of it. I still sometimes struggle to talk to my wife about things that are going on in my head and how we're gonna, like how we're getting there. And she just leaves me to kind of like sort myself out for a couple of days, and then eventually I kind of talk to her, right? But I know she's there. And I think a lot of people don't think that somebody's there. And that is a huge thing to, go to a pro, like you've done it. I'm sure I've done it. You go to that person, like you just said, hey, are you genuinely okay? Do you need anything?
Right.
Like that soul connection to that person is huge, right? And they now know, hey, there's somebody to reach, somebody I can talk to. So, I mean, like Will said, if anybody's listening to this and you guys are struggling, you want like total, confidentiality, feel free to reach out to me or Will. We're both there to help you, any way we can, we'll help.
Yeah, 100%.
I think there's times where we don't realize the small things are a huge gift to us. And so what I mean by that is, for myself, I have a huge heart for empathy. And I thought for the longest time, like, oh, it's my weakness. Right? I'm like, this is not a power to me. Like, how am I going to use this?
Right.
And it's not until very recently that I've realized, this is how I can impact more people. This is how I can do it. And part of it is this podcast. Why I've done this in like 2 weeks, we've thrown this thing together and we're booming on it, right? Is because I'm leaning on that, right down to the point where, and then I'm not tooting my horn or whatever. Like Chelsea and I went 2 weeks ago when we had a cold snap here, and we bought $100 worth of cheeseburgers and walked downtown and handed them out. Because I'm like, if I was in that situation, that would be like the best thing for me, is like a warm meal. Like, probably not the best meal, but it's a meal.
Oh, but it's satiating, right? It's soul food, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So anyway, I digress.
No, not at all.
So as you know, I'm a big fan of leadership. I'm in leadership roles in all the companies I've been in. What characterizes a good leader from your point of view?
Oh man, great question. I mean, I think you hit it too, right? Like empathy, right? Understanding, putting yourself in the shoes of that other person. I'll never forget. I'll never forget a story. I was working in a manufacturing facility growing up. I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, just before I got married. And I'll never forget a story that this VP had mentioned to me. We were in the logistics side of things, but the rest of the facility was like a hardcore manufacturing plant. Like there were just assembly lines, and we built digital oscilloscopes, right? Those are like EKG machines for electronics. And I'll never forget this story. I forget how it came up, but at the end, he says that there were people who were taking breaks, and Jane or John or XYZ employee would always be found taking a longer break, and then attempting to go back onto the line, doing what they can, and then going back to the cafeteria, going back to the break room, taking time out, and then going, and they were just taking a lot of time off the assembly line. And anyone who's in manufacturing knows that even if one person is off, that could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars lost, because maybe things are piling up, or one person is taking over the other person's job, whatever, right? It slows things down. And he says that he goes over to this person, and with total, what he felt was righteous anger, goes over to this guy. There were deadlines to be meet, and goes, "Hey man, what is wrong with you? Everyone is in line, da 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 da." And he says, "Well, I have cancer. I'm in treatment, and I just need time." He says to me that there is no particle on this earth that is as small as how he felt in that moment. instantly he's hit with regret. Instantly he's hit with, I did not go in with an open understanding and an open mind. I did not know what this other person was going through. And he says, one of the lessons that I learned in life is to ask the question, help me to understand. Help me to understand. Hey, help me to understand. I see you in the break room a lot. Help me to understand what's going on. Versus what the hell is, like he the way that he describes it, he's really, and that to me is a good leader. That to me is someone who was not only humbled, but humiliated. And then immediately after turns it around and ensures that every one of his leaders above and below know to ask that question. That to me is a great leader. Someone who totally fell on the sword. I mean, royally messed up a situation, made the other person feel bad. And said, I know I can make this better. And so that's exactly what he did. And anytime he speaks about leadership, that's one of the many stories that he speaks. That to me is what I think makes a great leader. Taking what they've learned, putting it in a way that everyone can understand, and then immediately seeing the result and impact, right? Because it's one thing to offer a story like that, right? And make people feel bad or go, oh yeah, that's a good one. It's another to then follow up and go, hey, did you ask that question this week? How many people did you ask that question to this week? Yeah. And there are some people who go, oh yeah, I didn't really have an opportunity. He goes, really? You didn't go home? Because I saw you clock out. You could have done it at home. Do you understand why your daughter does something or why your wife does something? You ever ask her, hey, help me to understand, or him, help me to understand? And that's when like the light bulb started going off, right? It was like, whoa, wait a minute. This leader is taking what he's learned, not only in business, but is able to scale it through life and business, and arguably in faith too, right? Because there are things in faith, regardless of your religion or background, that you could ask that same question and go, whoa, I had no idea. And it changes the entire perspective. And so for me, that's what's key in true leadership. True leadership is taking the experiences of that person, good and bad, and flipping it on its head so that not only do they make the interchange, but to then have the courage to go up and the leadership to go down and say, hey, everyone, we need to talk about this. I felt like this. I learned like this. This is whatever. So let's make sure that we do X, Y, Z. And not forcefully, right? It's not like he's shoving it down people's throat, but it was during a time where the story was appropriate, the lesson was appropriate to talk about. And then he followed up with it. That to me is what was so key. That to me is one of the many things that makes a strong leader a strong leader.
Yeah. No, I love it. So right now I'm following a lot of Simon Sinek.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Stuff. And he is just, when it comes to leadership, like I love John Maxwell as well, but
sure,
like some of the stuff that Simon's talking about is exactly what you're saying, right? Is like, put yourself, it's super simple. Put yourself in that person's shoes. Before you put the business before the human, ask, are you okay? Is there something you need from me? Right? I think there's the CEO of Costco is a great example of this. So he knows every manager and as many staff as he possibly can at every single location he has.
Wow.
And one of his execs in, I believe it was California, had gone into hospital. Without a blink, the CEO was on a plane and showed up in California, went to see him at the hospital, didn't care what was going on with the business, immediately went to see him. Amazing. Hey, what do you do? How are you doing? What do you need? Blah, blah, blah. And then went and ran the store for the next 2 or 3 weeks while the guy was in the hospital. Like that to me is like, we talk about all these great leaders and everybody's like, oh, Warren Buffett's accomplished this and all this. But to me, it's like, well, who are guys like Warren Buffett hiring? Because those are the guys that are boots on the ground making those businesses excel. And they're the ones that are actually putting it together and making this the leadership role. Warren just looks great, right? Because he's hired this guy. But I think it's a huge thing, and it comes back to empathy. And Simon talks about this, and I'm just realizing it now too, is, you have to be a human about it. That's like the one thing that we are given from all other mammals on Earth, is we have our brain, and we can interact with people different than any other animal on the planet. And
Right.
we often forget that, thinking of the dollars or the business or whatever, instead of putting the human into the business that needs to be there. Because in all honesty, if you don't have the people, you don't have a business, right?
That's right.
It's one of the greatest things I'm learning from the guys that I'm working with now, is like, without the people, we have nothing.
That's it.
Right.
How else do you transact, right?
Yeah. Okay, so here's a fun one, Will. What is one movie you would recommend for entrepreneurs?
Oh yeah, I'll tell you a recent one. Something that I heard about growing up was the Pepsi commercial where the guy is trying to redeem his points for a Harrier jet, and Pepsi came back and was like, no, it's a joke. And the commercial doesn't have terms and conditions. It doesn't say that it's a joke. And so he, with a lawyer, goes out and he pursues this. The documentary is recent. It's on Netflix. You could look it up now. And I think it's called "Hey Pepsi, Where's My Jet?" And what I love about it the most, I think it's a 3 or 4 part series. What I love about it the most is that it speaks about the 2 gentlemen who were involved in this, where an older gentleman and a younger gentleman. The older gentleman was, yeah, Pepsi, where's my jet? Exactly. There you go. It's a great movie because in the very beginnings, the older gentleman basically takes on this young guy. They have mutual interests in mountain climbing, and they get to know each other, and they start going to these different locations together. And so when you're mountain climbing, you spend a lot of time together, right? Like you're at a summit, and then you're waiting, and then you go into the next summit, and then you're waiting, and then you're resting, whatever the case may be. And so they built up this relationship. Come to find out, the older gentleman is, a heck of an entrepreneur. He's got restaurants and different businesses and stuff. And so the young guy who knows this starts pitching him different ideas. And one of the ideas is, hey, Pepsi has this new commercial, and you have the ability to, with Pepsi points, redeem it for a Harrier jet. And this is really cool. And one of the first things out of the older gentleman's mouth is, put a business plan together. How do you monetize this? Because yeah, it'd be cool to have a jet, but then how do you get the fuel? How do you really enjoy it? How do you let other people's? And he really helped this young guy mold a business sense into him, to the point in which, when they're fighting with the lawyers, now it's kind of exploded, and Pepsi's like, there's no way, and they've sent the check, and they have the points sent in, and like, I mean, it really kind of gets chaotic. It gets to a point where Pepsi allegedly, or their lawyers allegedly, slides a piece of paper because they think that this is just a money grab, right? And they walk away, and the older gentleman says to the younger gentleman, hey, this is your deal. What do you want to do? Whatever you choose, I'm behind. And that to me was business in and of itself. There's an opportunity, there's an idea, there's a plan, there's revenue options, there's plans to pivot. So if it doesn't go this way, go that way. Great documentary, just came out on Netflix. Pepsi, Where's My Jet? It's brand spanking new. That for me, I got to the second episode, and I'll put it to you this way, Josh. I got to the second episode, and I immediately ran to buy a brand new domain. I'm reaching out to older guys. I'm saying, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? Like I'm ready to go, right? It's a great movie. It's a great story. It's a great story of, the underdog winning kind of thing. And I love that. It's a great movie to watch.
Okay, yeah, cool. No, I'll have to check that out. I just saved it on my phone, so I can, I'll remember. On the next one, what have you read that listeners need to read?
Something recently that was really powerful to me was Business Secrets from the Bible. That was really, really powerful to me. It's written by a Jewish rabbi. His name is Rabbi Daniel Lapin. And he speaks about, from specifically the Judeo-Christian perspective, on why business is a part of faith. Something that really hit me really hard, and we spoke about the transaction earlier, the importance of transaction, the importance of people and being able to transact with those people. The biggest takeaway for me was that the facilitation of business is in and of itself the calling on God on both sides, because you have to trust the other person. There's a transaction of resources. So I'm exchanging my resources for something, and then that person needs to be able to accept it, receive it, be able to then follow through on the promise, right? So we have the promise of the Bible, we have the promise of the Word of God, we have the right. So it's all of these things kind of melted into one. And that to me was massive. When I understood the power of transaction, as simple as holding the door for someone, you know, you don't know what the other person may be going through. That person may be saying, you know, hey, God, where are you? And as the person is yelling, you open the door for that person. You may be the only sign of God that person ever sees in their entire life. Yeah. And all you've done is open the door. Yeah. Right? So you have no idea how important these transactions are, these connections with people, opening the door, talking to someone, right? Helping someone out. These are all transactions. And for me, really having that Judeo-Christian perspective, he even gets into the Aramaic, understanding like Middle Eastern culture and why, you know, Jesus does certain things or the disciples do certain things, and he goes on and it's a beautiful book. You don't necessarily have to read it cover to cover. I ended up doing it like reference. Go through the table of contents, read a couple of the lines. Every chapter can't be more than 20 or 30 minutes of a read. It's worth every minute of your time. Business Sneakers from the Bible, Rabbi Daniel Lapin, hands down one of the best business books I think I've ever read.
Right on. No, that's awesome. Yeah, we'll check that one out too, and I'll put it in the comments when we put this on YouTube too. So, cool. What would you say has been a determining factor in your success and mindset in two separate things, if that makes sense?
The determining factors of success and mindset. I'll talk about mindset first. The determining factors for my mindset, and I think I've harped on this entire time, first and foremost is my faith, right? I whether I love it or hate it, I go back to my mom, right? The way that she had me question everything. That to me formed my mindset, for sure, formed my mindset, questioning everything, including authority, by the way. It wasn't easy being a 12-year-old kid and being like, I don't know about this, you know?
Get yourself into trouble.
Yeah. Or in university, opening up the book and going, yeah, you know what, professor, I have a note here, page 37. It doesn't say, can you describe why or help me to understand why, So trust me, as great and guru sounding and as powerful it may sound, or as great as it may sound, it's double-sided for sure. That's one of the many things I think that have been the determining factor for my mindset. Look, I'm a family man. I love my wife. I actively pursue my wife. I think that's something that is very important for me. I've had the luxury in my life also, and I speak about this in other areas, specifically in regards to my upbringing and trauma and why it's important to break through that mindset, is I've had the luxury of having multiple father figures in my life. On paper, my family was traditional family, never divorced, they're always together. But my dad had to work. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad had to work. So I lost out on a lot of opportunities with my biological dad. And I truly believe that it was through the grace of God and through faith that I had faith-based father figures in my life throughout seasons of my life when I needed them most. High school, university, getting married was always just a different go-to, older gentleman that I can go to for real sage wisdom. And I speak about this in other talks that I'm blessed with not one dad, but genuinely multiple dads of a bunch of different ages, from pushing 100 to, guys my age, even younger, being able to refine, iron sharpening iron kind of thing, that for me definitely is something that shapes my mindset. And I think that is the foundation to the success. Because had I not had that mindset, I would not have the tenacity to push forward. I would not have the resolve to follow through. I would not have the courage to be honest. In some cases, when I don't even like it, when I don't want to be, right? But the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. And it's truly in my faith that if there's a loss of some sort, that as long as I'm doing right by me, doing right by my faith, doing right by my family, that in turn rides both lines, right? Because then I get to honor the father figures in my life while simultaneously honoring my faith, my God, right? And putting trust in that. And by doing so, I can tell people, I don't know how I'm getting to 2.8 million, right? Like, hey, dude, just a couple of years ago, I was a 9-to-5er in a cube, and I was just a desk jockey like everyone else. I'm just typing away. And this was just a few years ago. But I'll tell you this, of all the things that I've seen and of all the things that I've experienced in my success, I'm not going to call it luck. I'm going to call it faith. I'm going to call it God. And as long as I can continue to do that, and I have a platform like this, and I'm given an opportunity to say, exactly that, I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. I don't, as much as I want to, as much as my ego wants to take that credit, the truth of the matter is that I don't want to, and I shouldn't, because as long as I continue to keep my faith first, keep putting God first, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where I go or where I step. As long as I keep putting God first, He's going to divine my steps. And I may not like it, and it may be scary, and the steps may be going up, and the stairs may be going into a cave. But as long as I continue to do that, because of the right mindset, I find myself to be successful. And so in turn, I grew up Catholic. We speak about tithing, right? Tithing is giving back to God a portion of what God has given to us. And if I have figured out that if anything God has given me, I can share, I want to be able to do that. And I want to be able to maximize that. And I have found that as long as I continue to keep my faith, keep my God close, it allows for me to amplify any success. And then it forces me to not take the credit.
Yeah.
Because I can go and say, I don't know how these two things happened. I don't know how, this company bought that company, and then now I'm a part of this. And now now we're bringing in this much money. I just went to church. I kept my faith. Yeah. And as much as my ego is saying, no, take the credit, you're the one who did it, you're the one who, my soul is screaming, yes, 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 continue to put God first, because it's only going to continue, and it's only going to multiply. So as much as I want to take credit for my success, and yes, I have to trust in my faith and in my actions to do so. I have to take that action to do so. I can't possibly take all that. I can't possibly take 100% of the credit, if any of it at all, because I keep putting God first. So I think the determining factors for my mindset and my success are still the same thing. It's faith. It's having undeniable faith. I've been blessed to have some amazing miracles in my life. There's things that I just can't explain. Just even being born. I was not supposed to even be born. My mom had complications so bad in her pregnancy that they thought I was dying. I shouldn't even be here. I shouldn't even be here. So that's how I start the game, bro.
Yeah.
Like
starting already behind.
Yeah, man. Imagine. Right? So
I think for anybody that's listening, I think the biggest advice that Will and I are trying to portray in all of our conversation here is at the end of the day, it's your decision. You have to move forward, right? And quite often we don't. And I did an Instagram post about this yesterday. We're constantly looking back at what could I have done, right? Instead of looking back and going, okay, what lessons did I learn? We're looking at oh, I should have done this, or why didn't I do that?
Yeah.
And the post I put out yesterday was, ask yourself this question every time you're looking back and going, oh, I missed this opportunity. Was your mindset at that time able to do the thing that you think you missed?
Yeah.
It's quite often we don't think about it this way, but it's a blessing from faith, is you weren't supposed to do that thing. You were
Yeah.
supposed to miss it because you wouldn't have been in the right place, and it could have taken you down a path of like down into the cave, right? Like you said, that you wouldn't have known if until you got to this stage looking back and going, oh, okay, my mindset at this time, now I can see, what would have happened. So I think mindset is it's a constant thing that you're always improving.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, the chisel, you're always sharpening the chisel.
Yes.
and you have to, because there's so many things to learn. If you ever get in that state where you think you've learned it all, you've probably got way more learning than you realize, right? Because you're already behind by thinking that way. So it's constantly taking in knowledge, constantly listening to podcasts like this, listening to information, going to summits,
and sharing it. And sharing it with others,
and
right?
then bringing it to others.
That's the sharpening is not only listening to it, not only consuming it, not only taking the notes, not only putting a plan, but sharing it. Like, hey, Josh, I saw this, or hey, Josh, did you see that? Or there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but it's in the sharing. I go back to the importance of the transaction. It is in the sharing that you are multiplying each other's success by merely just sharing. There isn't a limit to what's out there. So don't ever think that there's a limit to, your level of abundance. Your level of abundance is going to be unique to yours. That's why it's your race. It's never someone else's race. Run your race, right? Someone said to me once, and I'll never forget it, that there's no such thing as failure. You just underestimated the amount of effort. And as long as you keep trying, then you never actually fail. You're just on your way to your success. It's just taking longer. You underestimated the amount of effort. And I'm going to add to that. Brendan Dawson and John Maxwell are friends. Brendan Dawson is someone who, scaled the business to, sold his last business for, millions of dollars. I think it's like 77 times EBITDA. If you even know what that is, it's a big deal, right? And I'll never forget this moment. John Maxwell on stage looks at Brendan Dawson and says, what I love about Brendan the most is that not only does he take what I have taught him, but he adds to it. And it's the person who has and can successfully add to their learning that truly understands that content. And so if I could take a moment to boldly add to that statement about failure, it's not just an underestimate of failure, it's an underestimate of understanding. You didn't fully understand it. You weren't fully educated enough, because if you did, then you truly would know the amount of effort that it would need, and you would train accordingly for that, or you would continue to do that, right? So it's not only an underestimate of effort, it's education, right? Educating yourself is so key. And the way that you do that, whether iron sharpens iron, share this podcast, share the content, share the books, share the resources, share what you have with others so that you can amplify your message. I mean, it's literally why my company is called Purple Circle. Purple is the most expensive color to print. It's the color of royalty. It's a nod to my Catholic faith. And then the circle, right? When you get married, you put a circle on your ring. When you're drawing a map, you are, circling where you want to go. And oftentimes when you are doing the right thing in full integrity, it totally comes back to you. It comes full circle. That's why my company is called Purple Circle, because we want to create not only a revenue generating impact, but we want to ensure that there's a positive outcome, not only to the clients, not only to our clients' customers, but that they're able to see their own impact. I've had the blessing of being able to see people come back and say, yeah, I learned this from so-and-so, and it changed my life. And in some cases they know, and in some cases they don't know that at Purple Circle, we were the one who built that infrastructure for that person in order to change their life. And that to me is full circle and is the reason why I'm in business.
Yeah. I love that. I didn't actually know that about your logo. So that's awesome. A wealth of information coming in today. Like Will said, like sharing the knowledge is huge, right? Like, I don't know if anybody's watching this on YouTube, you can see I'm taking notes, and I do that with everybody I talk to as much as I can, whether it's on my phone, whether it's by pen. but there's always some sort of value add from everybody you meet. Like Will and I have talked probably 100 times now, but you constantly learn different things from people when you keep talking. And sometimes that information has to be said 100 times before your brain actually takes it in and you go, oh, yeah, that's right. Like the biggest one that I think a lot of entrepreneurs talk about is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You can't read that thing once and be like, oh, I've got this. You have to go back like 100 times and read that thing and and then you read it, you're like, well, duh, right? But you have to read it and repeat it so many times and share it with other people before you can actually, take it in properly. So I love that. What advice would you tell your 25-year-old self?
What advice would I tell my 20-year-old self or younger 20-something? I probably would have said, get down to Florida faster. I'm a New York expat. I was born in the Bronx. I was raised just out of New York City in a suburban commuter town in Rockland County, New York. For anyone who's listening who may even know or wants to Google it, I lived in a village. I lived in a town called the Village of West Haverstraw. It was super small. We basically had at our wedding the entire town at our wedding, and not because we were popular, but because those are the people that we hung out with, because it was that small, right? Oh man, and not to say that there's nothing wrong with that small town feeling, because there's definitely nothing like it, but there is something to learn from those who leave everything that they know behind and start again and start new. There's a great line in Hamilton, in the show Hamilton, where Alexander Hamilton looks at Lafayette, and one says to the other, yeah, immigrants, and the other one says, we get the job done, and the crowd goes, ah, right, because of the current political socioeconomic kind of environment that we're in. It's a good line, it's a funny line, but the truth is that when you are outside of your environment that you were raised in, that you're comfortable with, it allows for you to make decisions and choices that maybe the old self would deem too risky because you're comfortable. And that's something that I would say to my younger self. Don't walk, run to Florida. I've been very blessed by this state. I've been very blessed by the people around me. I've been very blessed by the faith-based people that are here, and I can't see myself living anywhere else. So my younger self would definitely be, don't be afraid to get out of your environment, and I'm reminded of the years of ministry work that my wife and I used to do. We used to do high school ministry where we would help kids in their Catholic faith formation. And there was, there's trends that kind of come and go, right, with high school kids, well, just kids in general, right? And there was this moment where someone kind of gives a high five and then they pound it, and it's like this awkward moment. It's like, no, and it's like, no, like, right? And so they started calling that a turkey. It's like, turkey, right? Because it looks like a turkey with the hand. one of the kids would have like an awkward moment. They'll say something, or they'll have a humana moment, and there's an awkward moment, and someone would yell out, awkward turtle, and they would do this, right? So they'd have both palms up, fingers together with their thumbs kind of looking like an upside down, turtle, like a turtle's been flipped upside down.
Yeah.
I love the analogy of this. I love the image of this, because it is in the awkwardness. It is in that space, and specifically that moment of, awkward turtle, where sometimes you're forced to look up. A turtle looks down the entire time, right? It's always grabbing grass. It looks left, it looks right. It goes inside its shell. It never really has an opportunity to just lay back and look up. And this goes and emphasizes the importance of reflection. There's nothing more that I love these days than an awkward moment. because that's when you're the closest to your truest self. And I hope that everyone continues to grow in their awkward turtle moments and reflect while looking up, going, oh God, what am I going to do now? Well, yeah, what are you going to do now? And can you do it better? Can you be better? Can you do it better next time? Can you now become the person who does this, that other people go to because it helps you and helps others be better? So yeah, for me, it's run to Florida, go into awkward moments, learn to speak and find other people's stages so that you can share your faith and just keep going. Because I was on the right track. I held myself up because I was comfortable, because I knew everyone, because I thought that was the life I was going to live, a small town life. And by the grace of God, one thing led to another. I ended up running to Florida a little bit later in life than I would have liked. And the rest is history. I am where I am today. I am grateful. I go back to my phrase. I am grateful, but I am gratefully unsatisfied.
Yeah. Well, and there's power in that too, right? Because you're always in that chase of like, how can I do better? How can I get more? How can I, and I think there's like this, like I say it again, stigma of everybody's like, oh, just be happy with what you have. It's okay to want more. Just like you said, look back and take inventory on what you do have, and don't lose that, because that's that humbleness that keeps you in, and then it's like reminds you of what you've accomplished. I have run into it all the time. Victor usually kicks me in the ass and gets me back in line, because I'm like, oh, it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything. I'm not getting to this stage. And then like I'll scroll through my YouTube page or something, or I'll talk with you or Victor, and it's like, actually, you've accomplished all this. Like, well, yeah, okay, yeah, duh. So one of the things that I try to do more often now is the whiteboard, right? Literally go to the whiteboard, write down everything you've accomplished.
Love a whiteboard.
Doesn't matter what it is. I scored my first soccer goal. I did like whatever. Doesn't matter. Just write down the things, take inventory of what you have, because we get so fixated in what we're doing that we forget the bigger picture of what we've accomplished, the momentum that we have, and what kind of value we're adding to other people. So on that question, this one is a fun one. I want to see how you do it.
Okay.
What advice do you want to provide to others in your 80s?
In my 80s. Oh yeah. There is so much. I could go on and on about faith. Because it's been amazing to me. There's, like I said, I've experienced miracles. I've seen miracles in my own life. I go, wow, like, okay, God, that is great. Thank you so much. I needed that. And some people may call it luck. Some people may call it circumstance. I'd rather give all the credit to God. But in my 80s, I think in my 80s, I'm going to be saying the same thing I said to my daughter. I'm going to be saying it probably for the rest of my life. One of the things that I go over with my daughter every day, and she could repeat it verbatim. She doesn't need me to say it anymore. We use it specifically for her to go to school, but we use it to enter her mindset in that, she's no longer at home. She's about to enter into an educational environment, or she's about to enter into a different environment that's going to help her grow, that's going to help her, sustain her growth, things like that. And so we go over, for lack of a better term, I've basically built this mantra on all the things and all the activities that have come up in her life, or opportunities to grow and learn from. And I'll say to my daughter, hey, what do we do at school? And we say, we learn something. Be kind, give back, make sure you share, no fighting, stay focused. What does it mean to be focused? To pay attention and to listen, most especially to ourselves. And we learn from our mistakes. Why? Because everything is awesome. Everything is awesome. And we think for ourselves. Why? Because it is better to blaze a trail alone than to walk with others in mediocrity. And a recent one that we added, we modified, what we learn, right? Why do we do this? Whatever. And we usually start with, to go and learn something. And we recently modified this to, well, what's one way to learn? And it's, make sure you submit the work. So make sure you, finish the work, right? And as other things come on, we modify it, but that's probably what I'll be saying for the rest of my life. So in my 80s, I'll be giving that if I'm blessed to see my 80s, and God willing, I am to see my daughter and future children and grandbabies and great grandbabies, right? I think that's the dream for everybody. It'll probably be what everyone says. And I honest to God, hand to God, Josh, there's nothing more I want than for all of my grandchildren to roll their eyes at me simultaneously and go, we learned something, be kind, give back, make sure you share. Like, that's what I want. That's what I want. Okay, grandpa, bye.
Yeah.
I want that moment, because the truth is that's sage wisdom.
Yeah.
And I hope to be remembered for that.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's a weird question I put together. I was like, because everybody asks, like, what are you going to do? What advice would you give to your 25?
It's a great question.
So then, like, what do you do when you're old and decrepit? What kind of advice do you want to give to people, right?
Let me tell you, the way that medicine is now and healthcare is now, 80 may not be decrepit anymore, bro.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm seeing what we would call senior citizens today jumping out of airplanes and scuba diving, and it's like, man, I hope I get to do that when I'm 80, So I hope to your point, it's a great thought experiment. I think it speaks to and scratches the itch of legacy, and I think that's something that we all crave. At least men. I could only speak for myself. I know that's something that I crave. I was at a speaking event literally this morning. I have another one at 5:00 today, and both for the same content, same kind of call to action to help men be better men, and that's one of the things that I talk about is the importance of legacy. And I think that question is just a great thought experiment on that. How are you going to leave a legacy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I think like one of the biggest things that I think is struggling with a lot of people right now is society has this, oh, it's all for one, right? Instead of this, oh, we need to do this together. At the end of the day, we have that blessing with all of us to connect with each other, to have conversations like this, to expand our minds and our knowledge from a lion that just is out there to hunt and eat, right? Like, what I mean? We have that. And I think we need to leverage that a little bit more in society. Right now, we're so fixated on what is going on in the world instead of kind of banding together and going, okay, how do we accomplish this as a nation or as a group or whatever that happens to look like.
YOLO, right? We talk about YOLO, right? It's like, YOLO, right? I think it's really interesting. And we know this innately as humans. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Josh. I think we need to get back to, and there's nothing wrong with sharing. There's nothing wrong with social media. I have no qualms against it. I'm indifferent to at least digitally what's going on in the world, because at the end of the day, it's people based, right? It all takes people, right? But something that we innately know as children is that we're being watched, right? When you grow up and there's the cookie jar, right? I'll use the example of the cookie jar, right? No, don't touch those cookies, right? And so, of course, what do? You sneak a cookie, right? But then when you sneak that cookie, it's really interesting if you ever watch a child do it, from the corner of the room or whatever, when they think that you're not there. I've been blessed to be able to experience this myself with my daughter, where I'll say, hey, don't do this, I've now changed my verbiage so that it's a little bit more effective. But what's interesting is that innately as humans, when we know that we're going to do something bad, we look left, we look right, we may even look around the corner, but we always forget to look up. We always forget to look up. And I think that's what we're missing. I think we're missing whether you believe in God or you don't, and there's just a higher power, your inner self. I'm indifferent to it. I don't care what other people believe in. I'll never shove the Bible down anyone's throat. This is just my story and what I've experienced, right? But if at the end of the day, you're innately looking left and you're looking right, that means you've forgotten something. That means that something innately is wrong. Wow, and it's not necessarily because of someone told you not to. Because even if that parent or whoever the adult is in that child's life says, don't do that, what's going to end up happening innately is that the kid overeats too many cookies, and now the kid has a stomach ache, right? And they're going to learn. They whether they looked around or not, eventually that lesson is going to be learned. And I think that's what we need to remember most, that eventually that lesson is going to be learned. And you could avoid that negatively, through physical pain or emotional pain, right? Like eating too many cookies. We could avoid that if we just remember to look up, right? Awkward turtle, right?
Yeah.
Don't forget to look up, reflect, take a moment, think about it.
That awkward turtle is gonna be stuck in my head all week now. I'm gonna have to make a picture of an awkward turtle. Put it on this episode.
There's a ton of memes about it. So by all means, I wish I was cool enough to have thought about it. I hear it from these kids, and then there's memes on it prior to me. So by all means, like find the memes about it. There's some great memes about the awkward turtle.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I love it. Well, since I brought you on here, Will, I want you to broadcast your company, the services you do, how they can find you. Just do your 2-minute elevator pitch so everybody knows how they get a hold of you.
I appreciate that, man. I could be found at purplecircle.io. Purple Circle is a company where we help you monetize your skills and experiences so that you can make a positive impact for others. We're a full circle agency, right? What we try and do is we will pick your brain, we'll curate your content and your knowledge if you don't already have a course, but we do it all: courses, webinars, seminars, live events, recorded podcasts, you name it, from creating the content, curating the content, helping you market that content. We do it all, and we've been blessed to be able to help a handful of people, not only in learning and development, but automation too as well. Using CRMs, using sales-based tactics, and just the coolest technology. Head on over to purplecircle.io. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone. The right thing to do is always the right thing to do. So if you want to get in contact with me, you can get in contact with me on the website, and you'll be able to book time with either myself or someone on my team, and we'll talk to you. And even if it's not the right fit, we're going to give you the plan on a silver platter. Because whether you do it through us or whether you do it through someone else, we only want to work with the right people. And the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. And we hope that, and by doing the right thing, we meet the right people, and in turn, we make the right impact.
Oh, I love it. And guys, I've worked with Will on a couple of things. We've done a couple of webinars and stuff, and he's a wealth of knowledge. Like, I'm not a techie guy. I'm surprised I figured this out. But he just is. And he genuinely means that he wants to help. And when he says that silver platter thing, he means that he's there to help you walk away with something from the conversation. I think is the easiest way to say it.
Yeah. And if there's something that you want to ask me personally, life or in business, right now, the best way to do that is on Instagram. Just hit me up at Wi-Fi on Instagram, DM me, and, put, hashtag Josh in it first, so that I know, where you guys are coming from, where everyone is coming from. And I'll answer as many questions as I possibly can. I'm more than happy to do so.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for coming, Will. For you guys that are listening, this is the Not Fail Friday event episode that we're doing once a month. So I hope we brought some value to you guys. I hope that you take some notes, learn some things. As Will said, feel free to reach out to either one of us. Will, any last remarks before we close it out?
If you don't remember anything else, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the courage. Thank you to the listeners, to that one person. Just take one action. You don't have to pick up the book and do this. Just do one thing, just one thing. And that one thing will multiply. And before you know it, you are 10xing your life. You're having dinners with celebrities and people that you admire and love, and your life would be amazing. Just one thing, even on the worst of days, as long as you just do one thing better. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. I, hands down, am the example of that. It's just one thing, just one more thing. If I could just make one more thing better, one more step, one more action, one more. If you don't remember anything else, one more. And stay connected. They don't call me Wi-Fi for nothing.
Yeah, I know, the coolest name on Instagram.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. This is the Josh Martin podcast. I want to thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Hit that follow button, give us a rating so that we can get in front of more people and help more people get the advice that we're trying to provide for you guys. So thanks you for listening. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, everyone.